Mic check.
Welcome to the Direwolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Direwolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Fox Travis here for our weekly news recap from behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Quick status update. Direwolf is not dead. He is still alive. I know some of you guys were a little worried about that last time. He is, as we talked about a few months ago, he had made a decision that certain things within the current military, the current military that we have, as you guys know, there's a lot of political purges going on, and he found it to be more advantageous for him to remain in the military for as long as possible, as long as they will have him, and did not think that his continued presence on the show would facilitate that, and so he decided to take a break from the show for a little while, though he is continuously reevaluating how the military is doing with political purges, and may be back soon. Or not. We don't know. But he is still around. Alrighty. So, with that out of the way, we have a great show for you tonight. But first, let's thank our sponsors, because this show is only possible because of viewers like you. We would especially like to thank those of you who donate to us financially, including Kaylet, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thundra Erican, The White Lion, The White Wolf, The Timberwolf, and the Direwolf. Money is not the only way you can subscribe or give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, Twitch, and YouTube. And we especially like when you share links to the channel on any social media you happen to find yourself on, as the algorithms do not share our links for us. All right, guys. With all the lockdowns and political turmoil and Bitcoin losing like 30 or 40% in the last 2 weeks, it's important that we sometimes do status checks with each other every now and then, just to make sure that we're all doing okay. Like Kamala Harris, for instance. Everyone is always asking, what's Kamala doing? But no one's ever asking, how is she doing? And given how obviously unqualified she is for her position, it must be so stressful for her trying to accomplish literally anything when her only notable skills are having a uterus and being slightly tan. To relax a little bit what are surely her frayed nerves, Charlemagne the God, host of The Breakfast Club, gave Kamala a nice, calm, and relaxing softball interview the other day. Let's see how that went.
Siri.
All right, who's the superhero that's going to speak against Joe Manchin? I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Simone. I'm so sorry, Charlamagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
You can hear me? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice
So
President?
I'm sorry, you got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, so who's
I can hear you.
the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne.
Come
on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden, and don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris. And the reality is, because we are in office, we do the things like the child tax credit, which is going to reduce black child poverty by 50%, on track to do that. We do things that are about saying that our Department of Justice is going to do these investigations and require that we end chokeholds and have body cameras. It is the work of saying we're going to get lead out of pipes and paint because our babies are suffering because of that. It is the work of saying people who ride public transit deserve the same kind of dignity that anybody else does. So let's improve that system. It is the work of saying that we have got to bring down prescription drug costs because folks who have diabetes...
I want you to know that Madam Vice President, that Kamala Harris, that's the one I like. That's the one that was putting the pressure on people in Senate hearings. That's the one I'd like to see more often out here in these streets. Thank you for joining us, Madam Vice President.
I'm glad.
So, yeah, definitely doesn't seem like the stress of being unqualified for her job is getting to her at all. She seems very well adjusted and perfectly mentally stable. Definitely, for sure. All right, so a little bit of a special episode today. We often have kind of a theme on the show, and so I kind of wanted to preface the next several stories with kind of an intro to set the stage here. Because most of the next groups of stories, the next four stories all kind of go together, and we'll see why here in a second. So to intro this segment, I want to remind us of something that we haven't talked about in a while, and that's QAnon. Among various predictions about Trump secretly winning the election, Hillary Clinton being arrested any day now, and my personal favorite, that there's an advanced interplanetary space program with bases on the moon and Mars, the claims that put QAnon, of all of those claims that QAnon has made, the one that put them in the crosshairs of big tech, legacy media, and the Democrat Party, along with various leftists of all stripes, was the proposition that the world was controlled by a cabal of satanic, cannibal pedophiles. Now, this claim, more than any other, really seemed to set off the various leftist institutions of power. They weren't really excited about the moon base. Nothing got them, real excited about Hillary being arrested or whatever, or any of the other conspiracies about who Q is and all that stuff. None of that really mattered. The claim that really got the media going, really got all of these leftist institutions of power, really got them angry, was the claim that there's a cabal of pedophiles running the world. And this enraged the Praetorian Guard media. But why? Why would they be so angry about the claim that they're all pedophiles? Well, I think you know why. But to set up this segment, I just wanted to remind you that there is a prominent conspiracy theory that a large number of pedophiles hold positions of power in our society, and that they use that power to protect each other and procure victims. And for the better part of 3 years, the media, the government, and a particular political movement has done everything in their power to discredit adherence to this theory. All right, that out of the way, here's our first story. So, from Buzzfeed News of all places, secret CIA. Oh, there we go. All right, secret CIA files say that staffers committed sex crimes involving children. Ooh, that's not good. Declassified CIA Inspector General reports show a pattern of abuse and repeated decisions by federal prosecutors not to hold agency personnel accountable. And this was published on December 1st, 2021, so just 2 weeks ago. All right, let's read through this. So, BuzzFeed News, which is important to remember that this is not BuzzFeed Maine. There's two branches of BuzzFeed. One of them does news, which is as much quality as any other news outlet on the internet, which is to say, meh. But this is separate from BuzzFeed, which does like listicles about cats that look like, I don't know, Chris Evans. All right, so BuzzFeed News starts off with, over the past 14 years, the Central Intelligence Agency has secretly amassed credible evidence that at least 10 of its employees and contractors committed sexual crimes involving children. Though most of these cases were referred to U.S. attorneys for prosecution, only one of the individuals was ever charged with a crime. Prosecutors sent the rest of the cases back to the CIA to handle internally, meaning that few faced any consequences beyond the possible loss of their jobs and security clearances, though that's not even really clear if they lost those. That marks a striking deviation from how sex crimes involving children have been handled at other federal agencies, such as the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Drug Enforcement Administration, or the Drug Enforcement Administration. There we go. CIA insiders say the agency resists prosecution of its staffers for fears that the cases will reveal state secrets. Well, that's awful interesting, that prosecuting CIA agents for child sex crimes, prosecuting them for pedophilia, that could reveal state secrets. I wonder what the state secret that could possibly be associated with that would be. Could it possibly be a state secret that maybe implies that, I don't know, pedophilia is pretty common in the CIA and other bureaucracy and in the government at large and in the institutions of power? Is that possibly a state secret that would be revealed? Is that possible? BuzzFeed News continues. Let me zoom in here a little bit. All right. The revelations are contained in hundreds of internal agency reports obtained by BuzzFeed News through Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. So that's one of the reasons why we're using BuzzFeed News as a source here, because BuzzFeed News is the one breaking the story. So it made sense to use their article for this. One of the employees had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and he was fired. A second employee, presumably he was fired and then went to go chase down Kyle Rittenhouse a few years later, in the middle of a dark alley, but who knows. A second employee purchased 3 sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. Not seeing a lot of prosecutions here. A third employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. The records do not say what action, if any, the CIA took against him. A contractor who arranged sex with an undercover FBI agent posing as a child had his contract revoked. Yeah, the CIA is all the pedophiles, and then the FBI is like the group providing all of the child porn. They have like gigantic databases. There was a story from a couple of years ago that estimated most of the deep web pedophile like databases and like websites where they're like having like real images of like trafficked children. Like almost half of those are run by the FBI as honeypots, quote unquote honeypots. Though I'm not sure if it's really a honeypot trap if you can just, get in and get out and not really get caught. Assuming as the FBI is not really good at, not as good at prosecuting them. They're very good with providing them with material. They're not so good at catching them. Kind of like Fast and Furious with the guns. The FBI did a really great job with providing the guns to the cartels. They didn't do such a good job of tracking them down after the fact. All right. BuzzFeed News continues. Only one of the individuals cited in these documents was charged with a crime. In that case, as in the only previously known case of a CIA staffer being charged with child sexual crimes, the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. I wonder what the classified material was. Did it have something to do with, I don't know, child sex crimes? The CIA did not answer detailed questions, saying only that the agency, quote, takes all allegations of possible criminal misconduct committed by personnel seriously, followed by several seconds of cackling laughter by the CIA person who said that. Let's see here. BuzzFeed News continues. A spokesperson for the Eastern District of Virginia, where many of the criminal referrals were sent, also did not answer detailed questions, saying the district takes seriously its responsibility to hold accountable federal government employees who violate federal law within our jurisdiction, also followed by several seconds of maniacal laughter. 4 former officials who are familiar with how internal investigations work at the intelligence agencies told BuzzFeed News there are many reasons that prosecutors might not pursue a criminal case. One of them, familiar with the workings of the CIA's Office of the Inspector General, said the agency is concerned that a criminal case could lose control. In a criminal case, the CIA could lose control of sensitive information, such as all of the pedophiles working at the CIA. There'd probably be some information they might lose control of. The former official who reviewed the declassified Inspector General reports characterized the concern from CIA lawyers as, quote, we can't have these people testify. They may inadvertently be forced to disclose sources and methods.
Nazi fags.
How dare you?
Juicy nigga.
Why would you do that?
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a hopefully less shitty New Year. Shame to hear that Dyer will be away from the show, but luckily you are a pretty good show host.
Well, thank you so much for the $20, Adder Lupus. I much appreciate it, and thank you for the compliment, and I'm sure Dyer is thankful for your well wishes as well. And Merry Christmas to you as well, and to everybody else, which I'll probably be saying that towards the end of the show, because I think this is going to be my last show for the year. We'll see. Alrighty. So, CIA, and that was perfect timing, because I just finished the article. So, alright. It's interesting that the CIA would say, well, we can't, out of these 10 people that we found, we can't really prosecute them, because, they might have to testify, and, if they testified about things relating to their independent pedophilia, maybe they would reveal sources and methods of the CIA. Well, what would be kind of the overlap there? What would be the overlap between CIA sources and methods and one of the CIA employees being a pedophile and procuring child pornography? What would be the overlap there? Is it possible that, I don't know, the overlap is that the CIA has sources and methods that they would not like revealed to the public in ways to procure child pornography? Is that maybe it? Is it maybe that the CIA would like to maintain their ability to procure child pornography for their staff, and they don't want one of them to get picked up and have to reveal all of that? Because just maybe it would take down a lot more than 10 people if one of them was forced to testify. Is maybe one of the sources and methods a large chunk of CIA staff that are all pedophiles and all taking part in this? This article is rather lengthy and it continues, which we're not going to continue reading it here. But again, this is on BuzzFeed News, which the title is Secret CIA Files Say Staffers Committed Sex Crimes Involving Children. So the article goes on to kind of continue that a lot of these incidents took place using CIA computers, CIA resources, etc. And so it seems like if these employees were comfortable enough to be using CIA equipment, that maybe, just maybe, it's something that everyone at the CIA was rather comfortable with. I mean, I don't even look at like political websites like Breitbart on my work internet. I'll if I have to, I'll use a VPN. Typically, I'll just use my cell phone and take it off Wi-Fi. I don't even go to that like political stuff or Twitter on my work network. I couldn't imagine being at the CIA and committing like numerous internet crimes and child pornography crimes on the CIA network, on CIA computers. That's crazy. You only do that if there's a culture of comfort around those sorts of things. And so I think that the sources and methods that the CIA is looking to protect is just the rest of the CIA. Just the rest of the CIA. And this kind of links in with a few other stories that have happened over the years. I'll credit Crowder, Louder with Crowder, for piecing a lot of these various stories throughout the last couple of years back together and linking it to this story. But there were stories from the last decade or so of the DoD, Department of Defense, having a just insane amount of child pornography on computers at the Pentagon. There's numerous investigations, internal investigations, official documentation that's been released through Freedom of Information Acts revealing this. That high-ranking officials in the DoD had prolific amounts of child sex stuff on their computers. There's a lot of agents in various organizations, various federal organizations, that have been accused and credibly accused and prosecuted for committing sex acts with minors, using their position of authority to procure them, being involved with trafficking and distribution, etc. A lot of it's a little strange. A lot of pedophilia in the people that are supposed to be, stopping that. Almost kind of like, there was something to that conspiracy theory that Q had. There's also reports from numerous media outlets that Jeffrey Epstein had connections to the CIA, that various other agencies like the FBI had attempted to take down Epstein earlier in time before he didn't kill himself, but they were told that they couldn't because he was a CIA asset. Now, whether or not that's true, it's been widely reported, and I don't know. It seems like the CIA has an awful lot of smoke about pedophilia around it. It seems like a lot of the federal government does. Certainly there's some fires, but it would seem that not necessarily a conspiracy of pedophiles all coordinating, but it's a curious coincidence, to say the least. So that's pedophiles at kind of the highest levels of society, the highest echelons of power. Now certainly there's been plenty of stories about politicians. Those would be, oddly enough, it would be the bureaucracies and the intelligence agencies that actually have a lot more power than any politician does, even the president, it would seem. But there's certainly been plenty of allegations and evidence of the such. Look at the Clintons, for instance. But the kind of a little bit closer to home, I guess, would be lower level institutions that are packed with pedos, and who better to look at than CNN, who appears to have a massive problem with pedophiles who work at CNN. So from CNN itself, who better to report on their own pedophilic employees than CNN itself? So CNN reports, CNN producer John Griffin has been arrested for persuading minors to engage in unlawful sexual activity. Here we go. So CNN says, Connecticut man John Griffin was arrested on Friday and charged with 3 counts of using a facility of interstate commerce to attempt to entice minors to engage in unlawful sexual activity. The United States Attorney's Office for the District of Vermont said in a news release. Griffin, 44, has been a producer with CNN for about 8 years. It's important to note that he wasn't just any producer. He was the producer for Chris Cuomo. Look at him there. They're best of friends. All right. So your quote, "The charges against Mr. Griffin are deeply disturbing," a spokesperson for the network said in a statement on Saturday. Quote, "We only learned of his arrest yesterday afternoon, and we have suspended him pending an investigation." The charges stem from conversations between Griffin and the purported parents of minor daughters, in which he allegedly tried to persuade them to, quote, "allow him to train their daughters to be sexually submissive," as well as an indictment in which prosecutors allege unlawful sexual activity occurred with a 9-year-old girl, the news release said. CNN has not been able to identify an attorney for Griffin. According to an indictment filed on Tuesday, Griffin allegedly paid for and kept an online profile on a, quote, BDSM dating, fetish, and kink site, end quote, for several years leading up to the July 2020, on which he allegedly wrote that he was looking for women who were sexually submissive and open-minded. During a conversation, and mind you, this is the guy who's producing Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo was... I mean, I guess, I don't know how high of a bar it is, but Chris Cuomo was, up until 2 weeks ago, the top ranking show on all of CNN. He was the highest rated show on all of CNN. That's saying something, but the guy who had been producing that show nearly the entire history of the show was doing this stuff the whole time. During conversations on separate online platforms, Griffin allegedly said he believed in a, quote, a way of life in which women are sexually subservient and inferior to men, according to the indictment. He probably should have worked at NBC. He probably would have had better traction with certain former bosses there. Let's see here. Griffin allegedly used online platforms to seek parents who would, quote, allow him to train their minor daughters to be sexually subservient. That's a hell of a sentence. The indictment said. Around February of 2020, Griffin allegedly acquired a Vermont ski house in which he offered to host mothers and their daughters for sexual training purposes, according to the indictment. Now, one of the reasons why I'm reading CNN's article on this is because they pulled out a lot of the editorialization. In fact, it's ironically, this is one of the best technically correct pieces of journalism CNN's ever done, because they stripped out all of the typical opinion that they usually inject into their pieces. CNN is notorious for having awful journalistic standards. However, this article about their own staffer for their highest rated show being a pedophile rapist, they all of a sudden have this very high level of journalistic ethics. They're not injecting opinion. They're not adding superfluous information. They're not linking them off to any other people like Chris Cuomo, like I'm doing. And so most of the other articles about this from other agencies are very, they're certainly loving and enjoying kind of taking the piss out of CNN. They love that this is a Chris Cuomo producer. I think it's rather obvious that CNN would be hiring people like this. I don't find it surprising at all. I think the links to Cuomo and the Cuomo brothers having issues with sexual harassment, and as we'll see in our next story here, another CNN producer for a different highly rated CNN show also engaging in pedophilia. We'll see that there's kind of this culture of sexual aggression and sexual predators at CNN. So I'm not surprised about that at all. However, a lot of the other articles, like I said, they kind of editorialize that a little bit, as I'm doing. And since this is supposed to be, my commentary show, I wanted to have this bare bones explanation of the facts here from CNN, since they had such a high level of journalistic ethics for the first time ever. Very amazing. This actually might represent the best article CNN's written in a very long time, just because it does not have all of that extra crap in it, all that extra opinionated pieces, editorialization, or false framing, etc. So I guess kudos to them that they're finally learning. But I liked using this kind of very flat piece without all that extra excitement, so that I can add all of that myself, since that's kind of my job here, is to add the commentary. I don't want to read someone else's stuff that's already got the commentary added into it. But I would point out that this Vermont ski house, as is being reported in other news outlets, costs something like $2 to $4 million. That's a lot of money. That's a pretty big house. And so you got to wonder, well, what's a producer at CNN, someone who's been producing at CNN for 8 years, what are they making to buy a $2 to $4 million house? And he is producing, or was up until a few weeks ago, producing the highest rated show on CNN, whatever Chris Cuomo's show is called. I would imagine he was making a pretty penny there. And so then that leads into questions of, well, how did he get that job in the first place? Was it merit based, or did he know somebody who knew somebody who wanted something that maybe he could provide them? Or maybe somebody at CNN knew that, or maybe he knew something about someone high up at CNN. Maybe somebody high up at CNN came to him for quote unquote services years ago, and he leveraged that into this extremely high-paying position on Chris Cuomo's mediocre show. Who knows? Though, as we'll see in our next story here, and I'm going to keep reading through this here in a second, but spoiler alert, the story after this one is about another CNN producer who's been exposed this week as a pedophile and a rapist. So there's something going on at CNN, and that something is raping kids. All right, so CNN continues. Around February 2020, Griffin allegedly acquired a Vermont ski house in which he offered to host mothers and their minor daughters for sexual training purposes, according to the indictment. Between April and June of 2020, prosecutors allege Griffin talked online with the purported father of a 14-year-old girl and separately the mother of a 16-year-old girl, proposing that they begin sexual training, the indictment said. In June and July, Griffin also allegedly talked online and on the phone with someone who claimed to be the mother of two girls, 9 and 13, according to the indictment. Griffin allegedly paid $3,000 to the women to fly her and the 9-year-old girl to Boston in July, where prosecutors say he picked them up from the airport and brought them to the ski house, where, quote, the child was directed to engage in and did engage in illegal sexual activity, the indictment said. Quote, the allegations are deeply disturbing, and our office is committed to working with our partners at the United States Attorney's Office, District of Vermont, to ensure Mr. Griffin is held accountable for his actions, the FBI said in a statement posted on Twitter on Friday. The FBI, along with our law enforcement partners, where did I see the word motto at? Am I having a stroke? All right, quote, the FBI, along with our law enforcement partners, will continue to aggressively investigate those who victimize the most vulnerable people in our communities. If convicted, Griffin faces anywhere from 10 years in prison to a life sentence for each count, according to the release. So he's charged on 3 counts, which, because it's a federal crime, they've got to link it to interstate commerce. That's just, how the Constitution works, I guess. But basically, the 3 counts that he's getting charged for currently for sexual misconduct with a minor, he's got 10-year minimum for each one. So if prosecuted on each one of them, he'd have a minimum of 30 years in prison. However, they can all have up to life in prison. So that could be, he could be in jail for quite a while there. Man, that guy had a bad week. He was 3 weeks ago, he was producing the top show on CNN, which, I guess, if that's your thing. And it sounded like he was doing pretty well financially. It sounded like his personal accomplishments were everything he wanted them to be. Had kind of this endless stream of children to rape. He was probably living the life 3 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks ago, Cuomo's show gets canceled, and he's like, oh, man, crap, what am I going to do now? And then a week after that, he gets picked up for these sex crimes, and his whole life falls apart. Man, this guy had a really bad month. You thought you had a rough 2021. He had a terrible one. And he deserved it. And honestly, this 10 to life here, well, I mean, I think you should probably get a life sentence, and I think that life sentence should be, like 3 or 4 days. If you catch my drift there. All right, so I would comment on this further, but since our next story is literally the exact same goddamn story, we have another CNN producer, which is insane. Another CNN producer has been exposed as a pedophile by Project Veritas. Let's watch their video here.
Coming on the heels of last week's arrest of CNN producer John Griffin on multiple counts of trying to elicit unlawful sexual activity with minors, the subject of our story is another CNN producer whom had an ongoing relationship with our source for over a decade.
My name is Janine Bonanni, and I'm currently a case manager for human trafficking victims as well as domestic violence and sexual assault.
That's his fiance's child.
He sent me a photo of his daughter. It was not pornographic.
And as you were getting these text messages, what was going through your mind?
I feel disgusting. Mm-hmm. I feel dirty. And I reply, it's your girl's kid, like your girlfriend's kid. Usually every time we text, it's always about him wanting to see me and his stepdaughter together. But I do have a recording of him on the phone.
So I'm done having my mouth on her. I'm gonna walk up and put my patch very close to her face. Slowly unzip my zipper and just guide her head a little closer. And I'm just gonna have her kiss the head, and I'm gonna put her hand around it so she can feel what that hard flesh feels like.
And that was just my way to, get him face to face so I can actually have proof of words coming out of his mouth. He sent me a text saying, I love that she is getting you hot. I want to taste how wet she makes you.
And he's talking about who?
His stepdaughter, who's 14 years old. Even about my daughter, he's asked for things, and it has infuriated
Your
me.
daughter?
My daughter.
How old's your daughter?
15.
We're looking at a text message. Could you tell us what this means?
He said, so I'm not getting mother-daughter nudes for this help. And when he says this help, he sent me money. He thinks because you sent me money, you're going to get a nude photo of me and my daughter. Are you insane? I do not want this girl to be a victim. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a detective. People with power seem to get away with things. I just want this kid to be safe.
Coming on the heels of...
Alrighty, so reading in a little bit to the Project Veritas video. So that was a clip out of a much longer, I think it was like 12-minute video, which actually some of the accounts have been reposting that clip have been disappearing off Twitter. A little behind the scenes here, the script I was working on for today, I found one version of that video posted on Twitter in the morning, and later that afternoon, that same tweet, the link I copied, was from a dead account. The account had been deleted in the last couple of hours since I had copied the clip down, or I copied the link down. So there's some people high up who don't want you to see this, or would certainly like the story to be slowed down a little bit. So Veritas here. So just a little bit of context here for this video that you watched. So the person that you were watching, so it was very confusing. I had to watch it a few times, and the article from Veritas doesn't make it very clear. That woman is a quote-unquote friend of a CNN producer named Rick Saleby. And actually, the identity of Rick Saleby was a update to the story that came out yesterday. So it's kind of some new information since that video came out originally. So she's been friends with Rick Saleby for like 10 years. And then Rick Saleby has a fiance with a daughter that's not his. And Rick Saleby has, discussed very lewd, lascivious things about his stepdaughter. I think everyone probably knows that probably is not where it ended, unfortunately. And then this person who was in this girl that was with O'Keefe there, she also has a daughter and is friends with Rick Saleby. And Rick Saleby also wanted to do stuff with her daughter. So there was some confusion originally when the story came out that maybe this girl talking was the fiance, and I thought that for a little bit too, and it was kind of hard to figure out what the deal was. Now, who is this girl that was talking? She does have a name. I can't remember what it is. It's not really that important, but basically, she was at one point a victim of sex trafficking, and about 10 years ago, Rick Saleby purchased a night with her, which is, as you can imagine, terrible. She now works for a nonprofit that helps victims of sex trafficking, so she got out of that somehow. But for some reason, she maintained a relationship with Rick Saleby. I have no idea why. She doesn't explain why she would want to continue talking and being friends with the kind of guy that would purchase not just a prostitute, but a sex trafficked one. But I don't know, I guess to each their own. That seemed very strange to me, that somebody who's a victim of sex trafficking and works for a sex trafficking nonprofit to assist other girls in getting out, that she would maintain a friendship with somebody that she met through having purchased her. And I don't buy prostitutes very often, as you guys might be surprised by that. I don't buy prostitutes, so I don't really know exactly how it works, but it is my assumption that buying a regular prostitute and then buying a sex trafficked prostitute is a little bit different. One of them seems to be a little bit more advanced. I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's just as easy. I don't know. But it seemed like buying a girl who was procured by sex traffickers and seems to be kind of forced into that life, that's a little bit different than just some girl deciding to work the corner. It seemed like maybe it was a little more advanced. So again, the kind of guy that would go through that kind of effort to buy, and then at that point you're essentially raping a girl, to purchase the opportunity to rape this girl. And then she's still friends with him 10 years later and doesn't say anything, doesn't, I guess, send him to the police or whatever, or use her organization. She's in an organization that deals with helping victims of sex trafficking, doesn't leverage those connections at all to do something about this guy. And then this guy goes on to be a producer with CNN, who actually, he's not just any producer with CNN. He's the lead producer he's a producer on The Lead with Jake Tapper. The Lead is the name of his show. But Jake Tapper, another well-known CNN name, possibly runner-up with Chris Cuomo for top-rated show on CNN. And their producer is also a sex criminal who is fantasizing about having sex acts with two different women's daughters. Do you think it stopped at that, or do you think that maybe he was just testing the waters to see if this other woman would be into it with her daughter, but that he's probably done stuff like that before? Also, he works in the exact same building as this previous guy that we were talking about, John Griffin, who, you guys, I don't really want to read through it again, Jesus, but you heard the type of stuff that he was saying about what he thought of young girls, what he thought they should be doing, and it's clear that this other guy, Rick Saleby, has the exact same opinions about young teenage and preteen girls that John Griffin had. And they both worked in the same building, both producing for the top-rated shows at CNN. I mean, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but there's certainly some odd coincidences here. Certainly a few coinky dinks. Alrighty, so Veritas, this was their first article on the this video. At that time, they had not released the name of the CNN producer, Rick Salesby, but they have since done that. So we're going to quickly read through these details. Again, this is connected to the video. The video's got the majority of the information in it, though the video is really hard to watch. There's a lot of very aggressive conversations, and the recording that you heard is actually Rick Salesby. That's his voice describing in detail what he would like to do to this woman's daughter, who is, I think, 15. And the small shortened clip that we heard, that does not even include half of what that recording had in it. So this video is really tough to watch, and it was 11 minutes, so that's why I didn't want to play the whole thing on the show, so it was too long, and also I didn't want to listen to it again. All right, so Veritas says, source provided video and text messages showing CNN producer fantasizing about sex acts with fiance's young daughter. The video and text show a primetime producer at CNN fantasizing about sex acts with a child in graphic detail. The source, who obtained evidence for authorities, came to Project Veritas after she was uncertain proper action would be taken. Let's see here. So in the video, she also describes that she had attempted to go to the cops recently about the newfound taste that this guy apparently had for children. Though the police refused to act on it, they took her statement and then never did anything about it. So what does that say about New York police? Oh, I don't know. Maybe if there is a group of pedophiles running the world and all the institutions of power, and a bunch of them are also in media, so they can kind of cover up for the stories about the CIA and the DOD having pedophiles in it. And then, on the off chance that they all get caught, maybe they've got a few of them in the NYPD and other law enforcement in other big cities to, I don't know, make sure that those cases just don't ever go anywhere. But, that would be a conspiracy theory. That would be a conspiracy theory. We don't want to be conspiracy theorists, do we? All right. The producer in question also solicited sexually explicit photos of the source's underage daughter. So I think that's kind of like the key thing that's illegal here. So I think it's pretty obvious that this guy's probably done some other stuff, but of the information that's known so far, it's not necessarily illegal to fantasize. It's gross and wrong, but it's not illegal. The attempted solicitation, so he very specifically asked for photos of this woman's underage daughter nude. That, I think, is illegal. I think that does overstep the line. It's the attempted acquisition of that sort of material. I think that one is definitely prosecutable, and I think that there will be an investigation that reveals that he was doing a little bit more than just soliciting. He was probably partaking. Let's see here. The source told Project Veritas that she quote felt disgusted and was compelled to come forward because, quote, these people with power seem to get away with it. Yet again, I would remind you that this woman, she was perfectly comfortable being friends with this guy for 10 years after he purchased and raped her. I'm not going to pretend to understand the mental states of people who've been sex trafficked, but certainly I would imagine that one that would be strong enough to escape it and then go work for a nonprofit that helps other girls escape it. I would think that maybe she'd be a little bit smarter about who she keeps as friends, and maybe, I don't know, I feel a little more confident in going after people that are engaging and engaging this, I guess, economy of trafficked humans. But I don't know. Odd. Very odd. But the story's not about her. The story's about CNN producer. Another one. Being also a pedophile. And apparently raping trafficked girls. Let's see here. Project Veritas has reached out to CNN for comment. And at this time, we are awaiting a response. I'm guessing that CNN will not respond to Project Veritas, though. All right, so the article from Project Veritas continues. Project Veritas published a story today featuring graphic texts and videos provided by a source that showed a producer for CNN fantasizing about molesting his fiance's daughter. In one text exchange, the producer tells the source how his fiance's daughter was, quote, was wearing very closely cut bottoms at the pool before using graphic language to describe how he could see the outline of her private parts. Other texts were too graphic and sickening to directly quote. The message, and that's definitely true. The thank you, Sailreen Aus, for the follow. I hope that's I'm concerned I said something. I don't know what I said though. I'm concerned your username has tricked me into saying something and I don't know the meaning of. But we'll let it slide. All right. So thank you very much for the follow. Other texts were too graphic and sickening. Yeah, I already read that part. They were definitely very sick. The messages and videos were obtained by a woman who engaged in a sexual relationship with the producer in question for a decade. Though, again, I don't know why Veritas would describe it like that, because in the longer video, she describes that while she was being sex trafficked, Rick purchased her for the night one time. I guess that's in the most extreme stretching of the meaning of sexual relationship. I would suppose that that's a sexual relationship, though I think the connotation of that is a little bit lacking context, I would say. I think the context I've provided based off the video that Veritas provided is a much better description of what happened, not that they engaged in a sexual relationship, though maybe Veritas had more contact with her than just what's in the video, so maybe it was more consensual than what it seems like, though I'm not sure if you could ever describe a sexual interaction as consensual if one of the participants purchased the other one through a human trafficking operation. I'm not sure if that could really be ever described as consensual, but I'm not in the mainstream media. I'm not in a position of power, so I suppose that their definition of consent's a little bit different. Let's see here. Project Veritas' first course of action was to reach out to the authorities. Following that, we reached out to the mother of the children to ensure that they were safe. Project Veritas then reached out to his employer, him being Rick Selby, CNN, to inform them of the situation and give them opportunity to comment. As of this press release, we are still awaiting a response. These revelations come on the heels of the arrest of former CNN employee John Griffin, who we just covered, who was charged with 3 counts of using a facility of interstate commerce to attempt to entice minors to engage in unlawful sexual activity. To protect the children, Project Veritas is not yet releasing information about anyone involved in the story, including the producer. Now, the update to this is that they have since released the name, which is why we know that it's Rick Salesby. So in a press release yesterday, Project Veritas names CNN producer involved in Wednesday's tragic story. So Project Veritas continues. There have been many requests from other journalists and media outlets to name the subject in Wednesday's tragic story involving a CNN producer. After ensuring the family is safe, Project Veritas has made the decision to release the name Rick Saleby. Saleby is a producer on The Lead with Jake Tapper. Project Veritas reached out to CNN multiple times for comment, but as of this writing, they are yet to respond. The mother of the children involved in this story sent Project Veritas the following heartfelt note. We have redacted some parts to further protect the family, or further protect their identity, and request everyone give them privacy during this difficult time. The note from the, I would assume, former fiance of Rick Selby, sent Veritas this letter, quote, I wanted to reach out to sincerely thank you again. I am very grateful towards you guys and everything you've done for me and my children. Our world has just been completely flipped upside down, but none of that matters. We are all safe. I am hoping, praying, and pushing for charges to be brought against him so he can never do this to another child/family again. I wanted the public and any predators to know without a shadow of a doubt that I will go to the absolute ends of the earth to protect my babies. And I am tremendously grateful that you guys have saved us all from him. Despite the hardships ahead, I am going to continue to sit with these feelings of gratitude towards you guys and the woman who provided you with the information. Gratitude will get us through to the other side. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Merry Christmas. So, we have a CIA pedophile ring that, they can't be prosecuted because they're in the CIA, and it might reveal sources and methods. The sources and methods that the CIA uses to procure sex trafficking victims and children. You're a patriot, right? You wouldn't want to disrupt the CIA's ability to procure and rape children, now would you? That's just not patriotic. Come on now, that can't be legal. Got the Patriot Act after all. And then we got all of these smattering of other stories that about the DOD, Pentagon, other agencies having lots of problems with pedophiles in their ranks, actively using state resources to procure and rape children. And then you've got CNN. You got a lot of sexual predators at CNN already, but typically they were sticking to their own age group. You've got Chris Cuomo, who's accused of sexually assaulting one of his producer's wives a few years ago. Not to mention the reason why he was even fired from CNN is because he's assisting his brother and defending himself from sexual harassment of other people, most of which was caught on camera. And then we find out that sexual harasser Chris Cuomo, the producer of his show, is a pedophile who's been raping children for the last God knows how many years, using all of the money that he apparently makes at CNN to buy these ski lodges where he does it at. And then we've got another producer for Jake Tapper, another prominent CNN show, who's also raping girls and raping prostitutes that he's purchased on, I don't know, probably the black web or the dark web, 10 years ago. You think that's the first time that he did that? I doubt it. And you got to wonder too. You got some of the top people on the top shows at CNN, both engaging in very similar behavior with underage girls. And it makes you wonder, did they know each other? Did they maybe share stuff with each other? Were they maybe working together? Did they maybe recruit each other? Did somebody else who we don't know maybe recruit both of them? Did they know each other? It's all very, very interesting questions. But I guess until some of this actually starts getting investigated, we won't know that for sure. All of this stuff breaking within the last couple of weeks here, so not enough time for a proper investigation from law enforcement to take place. Though I would presume that had at some point in this story it been mentioned that one of them had a garage noose or a garage pole that looked like a noose or a Subway sandwich, that you would have 60 FBI agents in New York tonight all investigating this. But as it stands, because apparently none of this was motivated by race, the FBI will probably remain silent on it. So these three stories, and some other extra mentions and references here. We started off with kind of the highest levels of power in our society, the CIA. We didn't cover tonight any specific stories of pedophilia within Hollywood tonight, but, it's pretty well known that the entertainment industry is packed with them. We also covered tonight multiple stories of CNN, the headliner of the legacy media establishment, and their prolific entanglements with pedophiles. Now, for the common person, the regular parent, pedos in these parts of society are definitely a problem and something to be scornful of. But statistically, you're probably unlikely to ever really encounter these high society pedophiles. I mean, maybe they'll set their sights on you, but you're statistically unlikely. There's so few maybe there's more and more of them than we think, but there's so many parents in America. It's statistically unlikely that, your kid's going to get entangled with some CNN producer for Chris Cuomo, or some CIA agent. However, that brings us to our last story, which involves schools, a place that nearly every parent will have their child be involved with at some point in their lives. Even if your kids are homeschooled, you probably have nieces, nephews, and cousins who aren't homeschooled. You probably have friends at work or church or political organizations with kids that are in the school system. So yes, the story still applies to you, even if you think it doesn't at first. The video that we're about to watch shows a mother yelling at Spreckles Union School Board in California after she discovered that 2 teachers had coached her daughter into identifying as transgender and living as the opposite sex while at school. The teachers this mother is confronting convinced her 12-year-old daughter to join an extracurricular school sex club where adult teachers encouraged children to describe their sexual preferences, fantasies, and kinks. These adult teachers also told the students not to tell their parents anything about what they were discussing at sex club and to lie to their parents about the name of the club. The teachers named the group, quote, the Equality Club, to hide the true purpose of the group. And the meetings were held at lunchtime so as to better hide the grooming discussions from the parents of the victims. After finding this out, here is the reaction of one of the mothers.
Let these teachers come in and act as if they have nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. A mistake? How long of a mistake? How many mistakes are we going to take before my child almost lost her life? They didn't tell me that my child was suicidal. You allowed these teachers to open their classrooms teaching predatory information to a young child, a mindful child that doesn't even know how to comprehend it all. How do you not know what was going on your own campuses? Did you think that no parent would ever come forward? You will not quiet me today. I will stand here today and protect my child along with every other child who has not come forward yet. Do they have psychiatry degrees that I was unaware of? Because I didn't hire them. Okay, I did not hire them to sit there and nitpick my child's brain. You took away my ability to parent my child, even before I had any knowledge. I didn't even get to show support. You asked for support, I didn't get a chance. You planted seeds, Miss Caldera and Miss Baraki, Mr. Baraki and you, Miss Pagarin. Your job was to educate my child in math, science, English, etc. Do your job and let me do mine. They assumed that my child needed your aid and resources. They pushed it in the face. And tonight, I will stick up for her. Miss Caldera, you're guilty. Miss Baraki, you're guilty. You changed her personal documentation, her gender, her name, her email. I authorized an AKA added to her attendance because I wanted to be supportive. But guess what? She's allergic to bees. Her medical record says a birth name, and you changed it. Who administers that now? Not everything, not me. You guys did this on your own accountability, and you've gone too far. They downgraded me in front of my child and allowed me to question myself as a mother. You sat there and told me how my child was going to be. And then you wrapped your hands around her while I sat across the table and cried. Because you thought you could be there better than I, and I never got a chance. She was scared to even say anything. Your guys' voice were heard, not hers.
All right, so for a little more context as to why that mother was so angry, it was discovered that during the grooming sessions at Sex Club, her daughter was convinced that she was at first bifluid, and then later convinced by these teachers to transition into becoming a male. Presumably for the sexual gratification of the teachers. I don't know why else they would do that. The mother only discovered what was happening to her daughter when the teachers called her into a conference where they told her that her daughter was a male, that the mother would now need to start referring to her daughter by male pronouns, and the new name that the mother needed to refer to the daughter as, which was a male name. The mother was confused. shocked, and was sobbing through the meeting, during which the teachers treated her as evil for referring to her daughter as, quote, she. After the meeting, the teachers called Child Protective Services on the mother over the misgendering incident, calling her daughter a she. Child Protective Services investigated the mother and found no sign of mistreatment coming from the mother. The mother was terrified that she would have her daughter taken away from her if she questioned the rapid and unexplained change in her daughter and the strange, secretive involvement of the teachers that were grooming her. The school also hid from the mother that her daughter, as a consequence of the daily transgender conversion therapy, had started researching ways to kill herself on school computers. Suicidal thoughts are a very common occurrence for child victims of sexual predation, I would add. One of the, quote, teachers involved in the grooming of the young girl also spoke at a California Teachers Association conference titled 2021 LGBTQ+ Issues Conference, where they discussed running school-sponsored sex clubs in conservative communities. Now, the article in which I am gathering this information and the other sources, they would call these LGBTQ clubs. However, I think that not to mince language or be confused as to what's going on here, if you are having a, quote, LGBTQ stuff as well, especially LGB, is all specifically sexual. When you start getting into the T and talking about conversion therapy, that's explicitly sexual too. You're talking about specific things that you're going to be doing in a sexual context. Otherwise, there's really no point or any benefit in discussing what anyone's orientation is. So, and it's fine. That's not saying anything wrong with any of the orientations. It's just that the orientation, your sexual orientation, is specifically sexual in nature. That's why it's a sexual orientation. And then when you start talking about transitioning as a transgender, that is so that you would transition so that you can specifically engage or have the appearance in a sexual manner of the other sex. It's specifically a act designed around your sexual preference. These are all inherently sexual things. And so while this teacher association might want to call it a kids LGBTQ+ club, it is really a sexual club for children. And that's why I'm calling it a sex club for children, because that's what it is. There's really nothing else to talk about. There's nothing else in an LGBTQ context that there is to talk about other than sex. And it's really not the most appropriate thing in the world to be having a sex club for children to discuss with adults who don't have any particular expertise or training on discussing sex with children. Just asking them about, oh, well, what's your preference for sex, you 12-year-old? Oh, you've got a preference for these kinds of sex acts at 12? Oh, and then if they don't, are the teachers suggesting to them things? It sounds like with this girl, that this girl had certain things suggested to her. What is it that the teachers told this girl about sex and sex with certain kinds of people and certain methods that got this girl to say, oh, well, I want to be transitioned now. I want to transition. What did the teachers tell her about that? Let's see here. So the libs and these school teachers, they can call it whatever they want, but we know that it's a sex club. And so that's what I'm going to call it, because I think that calling things what they are would certainly help in the current conversation that we're having nationally about whether or not these sorts of things are appropriate in school. One of the things the left wants to do is confuse the language, because, oh, well, you don't want to be anti-LGBTQ, do ya? Well, no, sir. I'm not a bigot. But if you call it a sex club, and you say, wait a second, you've got a sex club for 12-year-olds, all of a sudden the conversation becomes very clear, very obvious, and it's much easier to have a discussion about how to proceed with it. But if the conversation is using this confused language with all this threat of being called a bigot, then all of a sudden it becomes a much more difficult conversation. So that's why I'm going to call it a sex club. And if you're a parent and you're at a PTA or a school board meeting or something like that, and they start suggesting things like this, or you find out something like this, I suggest that you also don't mince your words. Call it what it is. Call it a sex club. And tell the other parents, hey, they're having a sex club for 8 and 12-year-olds. Does that sound right to you? Because if you call it an LGBTQ club, all of a sudden, it could be, it could just be like maybe a history of the movement club, or maybe it's just an allies club. What kind of allyship are 12-year-olds doing for LGBTQ stuff? I can't imagine much. And why out of allyship are we finding, now these teachers are helping these children transition? And then, just like clockwork, you see this girl who was encouraged to transition by a teacher immediately researching ways to kill herself. That one's a little on the nose. I'm going to let that one go because it's such a serious topic. But this aside is just to explain to you. If you're searching for, oh my God, these teachers are talking about starting sex clubs. No. They're not saying the word sex club, but that's what it is. So if you're starting to research this stuff, you're not going to find any Google results with teachers try to start sex club, because they're not being overt about it. They're being subvert about it, but this is what they're trying to do. And so I'm trying to be using clear language to describe it, so that we're not confused as to what we're talking about. Because I think, especially when we're talking about, what we now see to be a rather prolific network of pedophiles at all levels of society, I think it's important that we use clear language to describe what's going on, so that perhaps we can have a clear way forward in resolving the issue. Using confused language and these euphemisms is not going to solve the problem. So, anyways, one of these teachers that participated in grooming this mother's child, she has previously spoken at a California Teachers Association conference, where she discussed running school-sponsored sex clubs in conservative communities. In her speech, she described how their clubs need to have no official rosters and no club records so that they can avoid the grooming efforts being discovered by parents. The, quote, teacher also explained more of her intentions in an article titled, quote, How Activist Teachers Recruit Kids, which she probably should have probably more accurately titled that How Pedophile Teachers Groom Kids, but again, mincing language. The article described ways of subverting parents who do not wish their kids to be groomed and sexualized by creepy adult teachers. The fact that she was permitted to give speeches and write articles about these programs at all show that this teacher is not just one member, is not just one on her own, but she's a member of a much larger system that was built to twist the minds of children and to groom them into a more sexualized identity. The end of this story does have somewhat of a happy ending. The mother that we saw in the video was able to take her daughter to a new school where she is no longer being groomed by pedophile teachers. When removed from the daily influence of sexual predators, her daughter quickly returned to her previous behaviors as a 12-year-old girl and no longer wants to transition or use male pronouns. The school says that they have disbanded the sex club. Her original school says that they have disbanded the sex club and are requiring all clubs to have a sign-in roster and permission slips from the parents. This is not a real solution, however, as those were likely requirements at the school anyways that they just chose not to follow when they were trying to hide their sexual grooming of children. Now, none of this is to say that some kids don't suffer from gender dysphoria. Certainly they do. Until recently, it was a well-documented psychological condition in the DSM-4, and there's nothing wrong with a licensed psychiatrist treating and working with children suffering from this condition. In fact, it's encouraged. It used to be encouraged. But it's very wrong for non-licensed adults who are not psychiatrists, not trained in this in any way. It's very wrong for these random adults to be asking children about their sexual preferences, discussing their sexual fetishes and their hopes for kinks in the future, getting certain genital surgeries. And it's very wrong for these teachers to be telling children to be hiding these sexualized discussions from their parents. This is what is called grooming. When an adult tries to talk to a child about sex and their sexual fetishes and their sexual preferences, and then also tells them, don't tell your parents I'm talking to you about sex, that's called grooming. That is usually the opening move to creating a situation where a child becomes more and more comfortable about sex and sexual situations with an adult, with the ultimate aim of turning that into some kind of sexual interaction with the adult. It always starts off with discussions, and then it'll eventually move into something more tactile. It's very clear to me that these sex clubs, that these teachers are trying to set up at schools as an attempt at kind of mass searching for children who are susceptible to grooming, because not all children are susceptible to grooming. And of the children that are being groomed, not all of them are going to end up, it's not going to work out. But these teachers, these pedophiles, have found a way of acquiring large volumes of children, having this sex club where they can find the ones that are open to being groomed, and then slowly they can start finding the ones that are, the grooming is working on. And it appears that unfortunately this mother's daughter was one of those that was susceptible to that. And the teachers got her to describe her sexual aspirations, her sexual fetishes, her sexual preferences. And then the teachers slowly started coaching her around, well, what if you tried this? What if you tried that? To the point where the daughter at 12, even the idea that she's got sexual ideas at that point's, perhaps a little precocious. But to the point where the adults there are able to convert that into a different thing than what the daughter was otherwise going to do. As we saw at the end of the story, as soon as the daughter was removed from that grooming situation, she immediately reverted to a default 12-year-old girl and acting within the parameters that a normal 12-year-old girl would be acting in, not having this dysphoric reaction. That dysphoric reaction was clearly induced as an effort by the groomers, by these pedophile teachers. And why am I calling the teachers pedophiles? Maybe they're just radical leftists. No. Again, let's not mince language. Let's not confuse language and definitions of things. If you are an adult talking to a child about sex on a regular basis, you are a pedophile. That's just how that is. If you're talking to them in a non-educational context, you're not a doctor, you're not a psychiatrist, you're not their parent, and you're not talking to them about, here's the birds and the bees, the mechanics of it, and you're talking to them about what's your preference? Oh, what do you like? Oh, well, have you thought about if you if you had some different stuff down there? Oh, have you've thought about, what it would be like with a different kind of person? Have you thought about that starts getting into this grooming territory, and that's what pedophiles do. That's what they do. So I don't want to confuse the language here, and that's why I'm being very blunt in saying that pedophile teachers are starting sex clubs at school, which sounds very inflammatory, but, I think it's inflammatory to be a pedophile teacher starting sex clubs at school. So, I guess tomato. Alrighty, so if the teachers said that they believed that perhaps these children were unsafe. That's why they called CPS on this mother. If the teachers really believed that a child was unsafe in her home, then there are legal channels and procedures to handle that. There's a lot of legal channels and procedures to handle that. There's actually laws in basically every state that says that people whose profession regularly engages them with children, like teachers or doctors or coaches, that they have a legal obligation to report certain problems with the child to law enforcement if they believe that the child is in danger from their parents, if they believe that they're abused or neglected. You actually have a positive requirement. I don't mean positive in like the emotional sense, but you have like an obligation. You have a positive obligation, an affirmative obligation in the law to report that. If it's found out that you were aware of the situation and you didn't report it, you actually get prosecuted. So nearly every state has these laws. So there are channels in which teachers being the ones most consistently involved with these particular sets of laws, there are legal methods for them to do if they think the child is being abused or is having problems at home, for them to report that. And so if these teachers really believe that the children were unsafe in their home, how does getting these middle schoolers to tell the teachers about their sexual fantasies protect the child? How does that resolve any of the problems at home? If you think that a kid is being, abused or might be abused at home, how is asking them about their sexual fantasies and preferences a resolution to that? And only a pedophile, like one of these teachers, could figure out a way of explaining that. Certainly not me. Let's see here. This whole situation is very obviously nothing less than adults looking for kids that might be receptive to, at best, political indoctrination, but at worst, sexual exploitation. To what ends? Well, I don't think any of us really want to find out to what the ends that these teachers had, but clearly they were doing it. Alrighty. So that was kind of our series of stories. Let's see here. Aw, somebody's upset at me on YouTube. Alrighty. Let's see here. So that was kind of our set of stories revolving around a certain group of people that seem to be at all levels of society. Again, there was a certain organization or a movement called QAnon, which seemed to have identified that there was a lot of pedophiles all over society, and the media sure seemed to hit at them pretty hard the last couple of years. And just more and more every day, we find out, hey man, there is a lot of pedophiles all over the place. It's a little strange. It's almost like maybe QAnon was over target, and maybe the media decided they wanted to stop that before any of the stuff came out. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm not saying it's all connected, but it is certainly an interesting coincidence. Alrighty. Let's see here. So our last story here is unrelated to this group of stories, and that is, let's see here. So our last story for the night is that New York City has passed a voting rights bill for non-citizens. So with the pedophiles facing a massive defeat in 2022 and 2024, wait, I'm sorry. A little confused with the last few stories here. I meant to say Democrats, not pedophiles. Sorry, it's just really hard to tell them apart lately. So let's try that again. With Democrats facing a massive defeat in 2022 and 2024, they are again planning to, quote, subvert democracy of our republic by letting non-citizens vote. On Thursday, New York City Council approved a bill that lets non-U.S. citizens vote in citywide elections. Similar to laws passed in many West Coast cities, the New York bill will grant people who have lived in the city for at least 30 days the right to vote. Proponents of the bill argue that this only pertains to legal residents that have green cards, but that is a lie. According to the New York City Council itself, quote, under this bill, any New Yorker who is a lawful permanent resident or authorized to work in the United States, who has been a resident of New York City for at least 30 consecutive days, and who meets all qualifications for registering to vote under the election law other than U.S. citizenship, would be eligible to register to vote as a municipal voter. The key section of that is, quote, or authorized to work in the United States. Many types of immigrants may be permitted to work in the United States that do not have green cards. People on work visas, immigrants with temporary status, with asylum claims, and DACA recipients, for example, are all permitted to work in the United States. However, they do not all have green cards. In June of this year, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that recipients of temporary protected status, TPS, who entered the U.S. illegally are not eligible to apply for a green card to remain in the United States permanently. But based on New York City law, they are able to vote. Obviously, allowing non-citizens to vote dilutes the votes of American citizens and removes one of the primary benefits of becoming a citizen and reduces the value of citizenship generally. It would also make it easier for coordinated efforts from foreign or even domestic actors to sway elections. A 30-day requirement to vote is insanely short. You could have, for instance, if maybe the denizens of New York decided that maybe they're not so happy with how the Democrats have been running things, shocker, you could see perhaps Democrats pay to fly in a large block of potential voters, have them take up residence for 30 days. There's certainly enough vacancies in New York to house that many people. Get 10, 20, 30,000 in a district, have them live there, maybe in a tent city for 30 days, and then all of a sudden they can vote in the election. I feel like you might start seeing large immigrations to New York City, pilgrimages, if it were about a month before votes in New York. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but it would certainly be a lot easier to manipulate votes like that because you don't even have to be a full resident. You just have to be there in the city for 30 days. Normally, if you're just visiting a place but you haven't changed your permanent residence, you can't vote there, or you got to vote absentee. But I don't know. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. New York and liberal cities come up with the most interesting voter laws. Democrats contend that because non-citizens are still using public services such as transit, education, and healthcare, that it is not only right that it is only right for them to have a say in how those systems are run. Democrats also say that no one is suggesting that these non-citizens should vote in national elections, just local votes, because that's where they live. But anyone that thinks New York City, or any other city, especially blue ones, are capable of separating out voters into categories is just not living in reality. What do I mean by that? Well, in America, you either have the right to vote or you don't. There is no class or caste system for voters. There is a location restrictions, but within a voting jurisdiction, anything that there is to vote on in that jurisdiction can be voted on by everyone that lives in that jurisdiction. We don't have a system designed to sort out some people in that jurisdiction. For instance, maybe people in jurisdiction A that can vote on law B, but other people who live in jurisdiction A can't vote on law B, or vice versa. We've never had situations where your neighbor is eligible to vote for a candidate in certain elections, but you are not. Either everyone in a jurisdiction can vote on something in that jurisdiction, or no one can. We've never had this kind of caste system where some voters are more equal than others, or they've got extra bonus votes that they can have that other people don't get. And why do I bring this up? Because New York City and other cities doing this, quote, local voter thing have no mechanism by which they can put voters into categories and separate them out for different elections. Getting onto the voter roll is supposed to be the barrier. You're either eligible to be on the voter roll or you're not. When a federal election comes up, there is no way of filtering out the voter roll for eligible voters. The election roll is already the list of eligible voters. And if they're now having extra eligible voters who would not normally be eligible added to the voter rolls, they're going to get them mixed up. Now, the Democrats will like to tell you that they have a way of sorting that out, but we all know that they don't. So now New York will be opening up the voter rolls to non-citizens that normally would not be eligible to get on the rolls in the first place, under the guise that they will only be voting in local elections. Then, when the next presidential election comes around, they will have no way of filtering these non-citizens out of the voter rolls, and so they too will also receive mail-in ballots. Very curious. It's always the Democrats that are trying to change the voter laws. They say we're trying to make it more secure than ever. Yeah, somehow it always makes it less secure. All right, guys. Well, that is the show for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I think that this is going to be my last show for the year. We'll see. I might change that if something interesting pops up, but I'll be doing a lot of traveling coming up here pretty soon. Once again, quick reminder, Direwolf has not expired. He is still alive and kicking. He had decided to step away from the show for a little while just due to certain political concerns with how the military is operating right now. And I think everyone would agree it's very important that he stays in the military. And he did not want to do anything to put that at undue risk, though we are continuously reevaluating whether or not that is appropriate. And so he may or may not be back in the near future. Thank you guys for sticking around with me, though. Fox Trevize here. And I guess if I don't see you, Merry Christmas. And if I don't see you after that, Happy New Year. I forgot what the last one was. I thought it was Happy Holidays, and I was like, wait, that's not right. So, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Hope you guys all have a fantastic next couple of weeks. Hope you have a good, fun vacation. Hopefully you have fun with your family, or maybe you just have fun by yourself. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Just have fun, relax, and try to survive what is sure to be a very interesting 2022. This has been Fox Trevize presenting for Direwolf Media's weekly news recap. And thank you guys. Been a great year, and thankful to have you guys around. All right. Well, that's it. All right. Fox Trevize signing off. See you guys.